Let's stay in the realm of Brics for the moment. The Parliamentary Forum has kicked off in Kempton Park. It follows that very successful summit that was held in Sandton not too long ago. All member nations are expected to be taking part in this two-day meeting. eNCA senior reporter Siphamandla Goge is out in attendance for us. Let's head over there now and find out what the significance of this forum is. I imagine lots of talk shops, lots of agreements and a lot of backwards and forwards about plans for all the various countries. But what does it mean to the average South African? What's the point of this?
It's important to the average South African because all the decisions and resolutions that were taken at the 15th Brics Summit, which South Africa is a member of, will have to be processed and ratified by various parliaments of all Brics member states. When you come to the context of South Africa, all the decisions that were taken at that Brics Summit, Parliament will have to process them because they've got policy implications for the country. But do they meet the constitutional requirement, the legislative requirement of it? And how does Parliament play oversight over what the executive discussed and agreed upon during the 15th Brics Summit? You need to look at this parliamentary forum in that context to say whatever that was agreed upon by the presidents of various Brics member states will have to go back to their parliaments. They need to check whether it does comply with constitutional and legislative framework, because at the end of the day nothing will be processed, nothing will be passed if it does not meet the legislative and constitutional requirement. And the role of Parliament is very crucial because it has to play that oversight role over what the executive would have discussed and agreed upon. So this gathering of all member states of Brics and their parliaments is very important because you've got more than 250 delegates representing Brazil, India, China, Russia, South Africa, but also members in waiting. You've got Egypt here, there's Iran here, United Arab Emirates. Remember that there was a decision that was taken at the 15th Brics Summit that there will be the Brics expansion, but that membership of members in waiting will kick in early next year. So South Africa, as the chairpersonship of Brics, is the hosting country for this parliamentary forum. Usually, or in the past, we have seen instances whereby this parliamentary forum will be held together with the Brics Summit. You will have the executive discussing what needs to be discussed, issues of global politics and global trade, and you will have parliamentarians, lawmakers and legislators or discussing issues of basically how to ensure that what is being discussed by leaders is implemented, but also they play their oversight role. Please take a listen to the Speaker of the National Assembly in South Africa.
This meeting serves as a reminder of the collective responsibility we bear towards our people, their aspirations and their well-being. By embracing the spirit of collaboration, empathy and mutual respect, we can build bridges that transcend borders and bring us closer to the sustainable and inclusive future. We express our heartfelt gratitude to every one of you for gracing us with your presence and for your wavering commitment to the ideals of Brics. Your wisdom, insights and dedication form the backbone of our collaborative endeavors. I believe that through constructive dialogue, sincere collaboration and united efforts, we can pave the way for a better Africa and a better world. I earlier on did say that we have the former Speaker and the former Deputy President. I can assure you that she's one of the people who have been pushing and saying, where is the memorandum of understanding which was agreed upon by the Brics Parliamentary Forum? And hopefully, Speaker, today you will hear, and tomorrow, discussions around that matter, and hopefully this is a forum. This is one time when this matter will be concluded.
I think it's what a lot of people are looking forward to hearing is that matter, being concluded. Let's hear from what Paul Mashatile has had to say about this as well, because beyond it being a parliamentary forum, the ideas of Brics also need to be very much about global change, very lofty ideals, but that's the idea behind this, isn't it?
Indeed, that's the whole point. In fact, before we listen to the Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa, Mr. Paul Mashatile, let me tell you and our viewers that a representative from India as well as China spoke on the issue of changing and basically diversifying global institutions. You are talking about the United Nations. There have been calls for change. A number of leaders, including President Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa, have been calling for those global institutions to be transformed. The issue of global financial institutions. In fact, one representative from Iran was very clear that this Brics parliamentary forum and Brics as a bloc will need to consider coming up with an alternative that will take on and challenge an institution such as G20, or rather as the G20. They need to come up with their own institutions and their own forums whereby they will deal with issues of global politics, global security, as well as global economy. So that's the whole point. Brics was started as this economic bloc, but you can't isolate it or divorce it from global politics, because at the end of the day, no matter what happens, it boils down to two things: global politics and global economy. Hence, the Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa spoke on the issue of transforming global institutions, but also for Brics to play its part. He is saying the aim is not to create enemies with other blocs or the West in particular, but is to come up with an alternative. Please take a listen to him.
This forum has the possibility to exert change on a global and unprecedented scale. For starters, Brics has focused the imagination of the world population beyond the citizens of its member states. In and of itself, this is a good thing. However, we should not be surprised when this success factor attracts negative responses from some actors in the world, despite the fact that Brics is not opposed to state parties or groups, but instead we seek peaceful and just world of equitable resource distribution.
So when you talk about the Brics Parliamentary Forum as well, there's always the issues. We have this in our own parliament, and I imagine within the Brics Parliamentary Forum as well, Sipha, is the issue of transparency, and I believe that's been raised again.
It has been raised again, but also the question is, in the case of South Africa, whereby our parliamentarians have been found wanting, even the Chief Justice going at lengths to say they failed to play their oversight role in a number of instances, the state capture being one of the issues whereby they were lambasted. Now, the question is, with this Brics summit, how do they ensure that they do not rubber stamp what the executive has already decided? Their role is to play oversight. Now, all that has been discussed and agreed upon by various leaders of Brics member states will have to go back to parliamentarians. They are the ones who are the lawmakers. How do they ensure that whatever is being agreed upon is done and processed within the parameters of the Constitution and the law, so that at the end of the day, the country is not compromised? So all of that, all Brics member states are seized with that matter to say you are dealing with a number of member states that have got questionable institutions when it comes to transparency and openness. For instance, how are you going to ensure that you are on the same page, you are on par with your Brics member states when it comes to openness and transparency? And how are you going to ensure that this forum does not become a talk shop? That is one of the major concerns. If you take into account that there is this long-standing issue that remains unresolved, they proposed to come up with a memorandum of understanding. For instance, if you are partners, equal partners, you need to have a memorandum of understanding to say this is how we are going to deal with each other, this is how we are going to cooperate, this is how we're going to work moving forward. But for years now, there have been calls for that memorandum of understanding understanding. There has not been any political will to sign that memorandum of understanding. This parliamentary forum will be judged on the basis of achieving that. If at all it will be successful, but they are hopeful that tomorrow that will be signed. Will it be signed? If it's not signed, will this amount to this forum becoming another talk shop? Please take a listen to Mr. Mkhuleko Hlengwa, who's the chairperson of SCOPA in Parliament.
We need to be able to know what we are dealing with at closer inspection. The people, obviously here, there's democracies which are questionable. There's oversight mechanisms that may quite be foreign to South Africa, but at the same time we need to be able to present the alternative, and that alternative is what currently South Africa is doing. Obviously, I do feel that Parliament in South Africa in itself has got to do more and has got to do better. Because we continue to run the risk really of being an extension of the executive. Take one example. Every year South Africa passes a budget, Parliament, that comes from the executive, and for the past 29 years has never been amended. Yet Parliament, when it debates its own budget, they will say we don't have money, it's not a sufficient budget. So there is a need that whilst we benchmark, we really need to sort out some of the internal intricacies for ourselves here, because it's no use preaching transparency, preaching the role of Parliament, saying we must play oversight and hold people accountable, yet we're not doing it here at home.
All right, senior reporter Siphamandla Goge, thank you very much indeed. We'll keep a very close eye on that BRIC Parliamentary Forum kicking off today. So it looks like all the big wigs are there. It's a two-day event, of course. We'll hear from Sipha later in the evening and, of course, tomorrow as it wraps up.